Hello everybody. It's been a while. I just checked right now. My last stream on YouTube was, I believe, almost a year ago, beginning of February last year. So I hope everything's working as it should be. I hope the music isn't too loud. I've reset my entire computer. It's a new system. I've migrated OBS, so anything can go wrong. Just in case, please drop a comment, then I will try to fix it. But otherwise, welcome to this episode of the BC coding stream. And yeah, the year has been crazy. I've been using Claude Code quite a bit, and I think I finally have a process in place that somehow works. And I figured I'd share it with you. So I hope everybody knows Claude Code. It's an AI development agent, I believe is the term for it. And it behaves in a way similar to Copilot or Cursor or whatnot, other tools. I've learned there are quite a few of them out there. I've been stuck to this one. It works for me, so I don't know if others are better or similar or I don't know. So, but I want to show you what I do. And I mean, the beginning of how I started using Claude Code, and I just want to cover a few minutes on that, would be probably just by typing in, like opening this in a project and doing something like this, right? Asking what does this or what is this project about? And then it's starting to do something. It's starting to think. And hopefully put out some stuff. And I hope this doesn't take too long. It shouldn't. The Explorer is done. Trying to wrap everything up, and as you can see, this is the project I've opened. Is the Business Central Sentinel. It does a few things, and in general it's written in AL, Business Central's language, so it knows about this. It's enum driven, interface pattern, and so on and so on. And this is cool. But those one-off prompts do not really work well if you get into development that is a little bit more complex, right? So whenever you start to develop in AL, especially because AL is not that popular of a language in terms of development, LLMs tend to struggle a little bit with all sorts of problems. And my take, and I mean it's not really my take, I've attended a session on Directions EMEA in Poznan last year in November. Vieko did a great talk about how he uses also Claude Code, I believe. And it was all about sub-agents. So I've worked on my take on implementing this kind of development workflow using agents based on what he's shown there. So if I'm not sure if you're gonna repeat it or not, but in case, it's really worth watching. So my take on this is my config, and I've just published this. I hope there is nothing in there that shouldn't be published. I've tried to be sure of it, but in general, this is just the config I use. So just at the very beginning, a disclaimer of this is like provided as is. You can use any of it, of course. But yeah, it's just my config synced to GitHub for backup purposes and for you to have a look at it. And the idea is a concept called plugins. When you are in Claude Code, and I'll close this out. Let me see if I can reopen this real quick. And a little bit bigger, I believe. Better. Like this. If you type slash and type plugins, there is a library of plugins you can just install. I'm not exactly sure like how the installation part of this works when you pull this from somewhere, but there are like marketplaces you can have installed plugins, and you can also discover them some. I don't know, but this is a thing where you can package entire solutions or like prompts and agents, and you will see in a second. And what I've done is I have my own marketplace here, as you can see, my Claude configs, and this is what I just showed you on GitHub. And I think, I mean, this is all AI generated, don't get me wrong, but I think there should be explanation in here on how to link this up, because it's been a while since I've done the marketplace registration. I'm not sure if it's at all necessary anymore, but yeah, it should be in here. If not, just open an issue. I will try to explain it. But also Claude Code is perfectly in managing those kind of things. If you struggle installing, just ask Claude Code to install it for you. And what this essentially does is there is a marketplace JSON which just defines the marketplace in general, and then there is the list of plugins this marketplace supports or includes, which is just this one. And it contains all sorts of things. So let me see if I can open up the plugin JSON. So this is like meant to be a full lifecycle development process with a number of agents and also a number of commands. Those are not listed in the config, but, and again, this is my configuration, so not all of this is really working or even used by me or tested, but the things I mostly use is plan. So this is the planning phase. I just call /plan and give it some instructions. It creates a requirements document and a solution document. And then after that, I call develop. Develop does development, code review, and diagnostics, and I will show you those in a second. And then you can also do something like a document, which creates documentation or for the develop feature, and test, which is essentially creating tests, writing tests, and reviewing the tests, as we cannot really execute tests that easily. And occasionally I also use the interview command, which is meant to just brainstorm. So it goes through a number of things which you might not have thought of or something, just to refine the planning. I think this is meant to be run before the planning. I like to do the planning first and then the interview to refine the planning, but you can play around with that. Yeah, and so let's look at the planning again, which is the first one. And it is basically a prompt. What the command in Claude Code is a saved prompt. So it has permissions, and let's maybe look at this from within here. I don't know how about you, but I like the raw view of Markdown better. So it has a description. This description is exposed to the main session of Claude Code, so it knows what this plan is about. It has some tools it's allowed to use, and then it has instructions. And the instructions, this is basically a saved prompt. And the prompt defines that it's that it should use agents. And now I need to see where that happens. What it would. Oh yeah, here. What it does, it runs the two planning agents with approval gates. So first it runs the requirements engineer, and then it runs the solution planning, which is architecture and implementation. I had that separate in the beginning, but it was like really, I don't know, overhead. I didn't really need separate steps for those. And it basically, what I also have is approval question. So if I have like a approval gate in between those, I didn't want to have the development process being like done, everything implemented, and then I look at the requirements document I created and figure out everything's wrong. This was completely not what I meant. So I wanted to have approval gates, and it worked really good that it never proceeds without confirmation from me beyond requirements and also beyond solution planning. It really stops and asks to continue, and then I can review the document it created. Because also in the main Claude MD, so this is the main instructions for this entire project, it says we are document driven. What I wanted to achieve is that I can at any point stop implementing. Like when it's done with planning, I can close everything out. I can start a completely new session later that day or the next day or whenever, and continue with the same implementation cycle. Also, it really helps with clearing the context. If you need to dump the context and start fresh because you ran out of, then having the documents, like everything, every result in Markdown files in a folder structure, really helps to pick up and continue. So this is what they do. And then also coming back here, this is the question, so it's interactive question, but it's also where is it? Maybe it's in the Claude one. Yeah, return one-line status update. So it's not that prominent anymore, but it works. What this does is it writes the stuff down to the files, and then it returns just a summary to the main session you're interacting with. And that keeps the context of the main session super clean. They don't need to, like the main session you're working with doesn't need to know all the details. It's in the files for the next agent to read again. So the main session is just orchestrating the agents a little bit and maybe having the conversation with you, but it's not responsible of knowing everything. And that way you can have way longer sessions with Claude Code compared to just having it do everything at once. Yeah, I've played around with a project context markdown as well to have it save, like, to prevent every agent, because they're starting with a fresh context, to prevent them from iterating over all the files and rereading everything again, basically. And what this essentially ends up creating is a folder structure or document structure like this. We have the context, we have requirements, the solution plan. We have then afterwards, development doesn't create a document. It creates AL code, but afterwards the code review runs. Then diagnostics are executed, so the compiler runs with all the code cops running, so it can look at the diagnostics, fix them, and then we can create the test documents. And it also logs a little bit of what the session did in order to follow up and continue again. Yeah, so this is what I basically do, and let's have a look at maybe one or two of the agents. So the first one will be the requirements engineer, and this looks similar. And again, all of this is created by Claude Code. I did not write a single character in this entire repo. The definition of an agent is also a description where it can, which helps the main session to identify the agent and call it. But since it's named in the command, it's not that important. It has capabilities. it can define which model to use. So I mainly run Sonnet in the main session and then have this model run Opus, or this agent run Opus, because it's better for the planning phase. And then it has all the different criteria, what it has to do, what it has to create. And while this is still not that AL specific, we start to look at, for example, the developer. Also just mentioning AL code, but I want to look for one specific thing. So we have a little bit of AL code in here just to guide it, give examples. And then I had really problems with AL compile, because I'm not sure if you have seen how an AL compile command looks like, but if you need to specify the folder, you need to specify the all the analyzers separately. You have to specify the packages you're using, the AL packages folder or folders, and like many things. So I've created again a wrapper for this. You see if I can pull this up real quick. Repositories, AL Smart Compile. This already open source and public and things, because this is how it looks like. I mean, you can have the ALC somewhere in your path, but it's still complicated. And with this, you just run AL compile. It automatically detects your VS Code folders, the extension folder. It grabs the latest one, reuses the compiler from there. You don't need to install anything. I think it automatically detects the project, or just like it tells you if you're not in a project that you should move to a project and then run it from there again. It finds the package cache, it finds all the analyzers automatically and just runs it. So that's like 1000% easier for an agent, for AI to run this. So it made it really much easier. So this is what the developer does for compilation, and also for like seeing if there are any issues with diagnostics. And then I have the code reviewer in the chain. That's basically just, again, reviewing things, and I try to make it really run, like do dry and solid development, but I'm still working on that. It's not really following those, and it also assumes that warnings and infos are fine in the diagnostics, so that's also something I still need to fix. But it really helps with putting out first of all code that works, or at least compiles, and is not that bad actually. So I've seen my Claude iterate multiple times over the reviewer and going back to the developer for fixing things that it complained about. So it runs a little longer, but the output is much better. And then the last one I always run is the diagnostics fixer, because I just don't want to look at all the things that it did wrong, especially with the lintercop installed. There are so many things it can actually fix before I even look at it. So this is what it does. And now this was theory. Let me show you what I have done today. Let me go back to here. I'm working for a customer on a project. Yeah, where I do some integration with an external system. I've done many coding sessions with Claude Code already. I'm finally to a point now where it's more or less working. So today I took some time and had it rerun or analyze the code for testability. I want to show you 2 sessions. And I scrolled this up already before the stream, but apparently it scrolled down on me again. So bear with me just a second. Here we go. So my first prompt was, and I hope this is big enough. Let me make it one step bigger or 2. This is why it scrolled down. Okay. Got it. Scrolling up again. Not sure if there is a keyboard shortcut, but I tried, I didn't find one. Okay, so I told it, please go through the entire code base of this extension to identify procedures that are not possible or at least not good to write unit tests against, and create a comprehensive plan of refactoring those into smaller functions, or however feasible to make them testable better. So then it ran for 2 minutes, analyzed with the requirements engineer, apparently two times. Oh, it failed in the first one, I believe. Then it ran again. It created the requirements document. Now I hope it doesn't scroll up if I switch the window again. And the requirements document it created for me was this one. So there we have like 200 and something lines of requirements. And I think I've reviewed this a little bit and I figured this doesn't make too much sense. Let me go back to the file. Let me see. So this was the approval gate it showed me. Oh, I've approved this one. Okay. Then it came back and said, well, we need resolvers, we need helper code units and things. Let me show you the design document it created, the solution. So this way, what it wanted to do is, it wanted to create a resolver code units, and I'm not sure if I can show you the code behind it because I have the changes already pending. But I had code units also created by Claude Code before that are looking like this. So single instance true, and like mock client things with interfaces where you can set and get mock clients from the test app basically. That's like, this is not how I want to have my code written, right? Because first of all, I'm allergic against single instance if I don't need it, and it feels wrong to put it in one phrase. I'm not sure why this is. Oh no, it didn't scroll down. Okay. So I wanted to say, well, do interview. It complained a little bit that we should do interview first. And in the end, I've found, line 98. Let me go back. Sorry for jumping back and forth, but it's been a long day. Line 98, that it assumed that we cannot assign here. We cannot assign an interface, like return a code unit to an interface. And I was like, well, this is wrong. We can do this, right? So I've reviewed the solution. I've read through the document and given my experience basically. I did some research, figured out, yes, we can assign code units to interfaces. Of course we can. It gave me a little bit of code. Then was like, okay, we can do this. So we create option 1 or 2. We create either a single instance set test mode should skip something, and this one also has single instance true. Now I don't want to do single instance. Can we just create an interface wrapper for the posting so you can mock it in your test app? So I've guided it through this process and given my feedback again. I was praised a little bit, of course, as I always does, and in the end, I was happy with the results. So this was the plan, and what I've told it was that I want to have Claude create a prompt basically to dump this in a new planning phase. This was the prompt it created, and then I went ahead and did another round trip. So this is my first planning iteration. That's why I have those in archived folder basically, because I say, well, let's don't delete it, but I need to move it somewhere to start over. And then I did. I started over again. Let me scroll up. And I did another plan with that prompt it gave me. And I figured, before I continue, I figured this is also something that really helped me with this whole process. Apart from having Claude write this entire plugin, I often do exploration in a session, ask it at the end before the context overflows to create a prompt for me, or to write down details in a file, or I don't know, like it will author the next iteration basically for me, to write everything down that's important, and then I reiterate over this in a clean context. Okay, so it started planning. It ran for 3 minutes, burned 150,000 tokens in the with the requirements engineer, and it put out the requirements document. And I've again reviewed the requirements document. Let me open it. This was the new one, and this is now already refined. So, but you get an idea. Now we are at 700 lines. I've reviewed, I've commented on it, and it started the requirements engineer again. And it started the requirements engineer again. And figured now it's done. Not sure if I've already confirmed it at that point. Nope. I haven't. Then it started for some reason to not use the agent anymore that I've created, but it started to edit it directly. It sometimes does that if the edits are not too big. There were a few questions in the document, so I've answered those. It documented everything. And then it started the solution plan. I'd run for 5 minutes straight and created the solution plan, which is almost 700 lines again, but it already writes down, like it defines what kind of interfaces we need for this, like what kind of procedures it should create. I've instructed it to not write AL code because it tended to write entire documents of code. So it stopped that after I've instructed it to not do that anymore, but it still includes some AL code, and I figure this is helpful for the developer agent to focus on writing real AL code and not drift into different languages, because I think everybody of us has seen that. I think there was a question. If I run everything on Linux, yes, I do. I don't have a single Windows machine in my house anymore. Everything's Linux. I do have a VM in a Docker container for Windows in case I need to do report design. But apart from that, everything else I do is on Linux. That's not just for Claude Code. And it's natively on my machine. It's not in a VM or something. Yeah, so this is the solution plan I created. There's still AL code in there, so my instructions still need refinement. But that's what I do basically, and I now would dump this into another Claude Code session. Say, well, this is against what I've had in the instructions. Can we fix this? And then Claude fixes the prompts, and then I try again. Well, let's go back to the session. I said I started the developer based on this. I didn't reiterate because I figured I prefer to review the code afterwards. If the requirements are clear, if the solution document is not way off, then I just approve this and reiterate afterwards. But I said it should remember that actual test code is out of scope. So it started 6 phases because it's a large implementation. It runs the developer for each phase sequentially. So it ran for 5 minutes, or 9 minutes, or 30 minutes. And while it ran the third phase, I noticed something. I started to look at the code a little bit, and I had a comment. Because it had like, I instructed it to create overloads, but the overloads it created were like this, process internal. And I said, well, it's not finished yet, I know, but maybe change it, because it's confusing a little bit, because it says internal, and sometimes it was not internal, and I don't know. And what you can do in Claude Code is, while this was running, I prompted, I wrote this prompt, I send it, and then it queues up. So as soon as it finished with phase 3, it picked up my prompt, it read it basically, and it started to fix those. So before continuing with phase 4 from the original plan, it started to fix the namings in 3 minutes. And then I had some more comments that it then sent at the end, but essentially it ran through this, it ran through phase 4, phase 5, phase 6, and then it also changed the local access modifiers to internal, because if I want to call them from a test app, they have to be internal, not local. And then in total, it doesn't show it anymore, but it was running like 1 hour, I think, in complete for the entire development process. Like 5 minutes, 9 minutes, 13 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. Oh no, not for development only, because it already continued right away with the code review. 5 minutes. It found 4 non-blocking issues. Let's look at the code review document. So it reviewed its own code in a new agent session, and it said, well, here are driver violations. We don't want to do that. So it says where it found it, what's the issue, what's the fix, and categorization, more driver violations and more. And then also unused parameters and different issues where just, I probably would have catched those. I'm not sure if I would have complained at that point about drive violations. Maybe I would have noticed when I would start to work on the tests, but this way it's fixed before Claude Code even reports that it's done. Some medium priority issues, but in the end, Claude decided to look at 4 issues and started the developer agent again. It reiterated back to the developer agent with the prompt. And there are more, like the prompts are more detailed in the background, but I'm not sure if I can open them from here again. When it's running, you can press Ctrl O and then it expands the prompt and things. You can look at this. Those are like the initial prompt I had, like multi-line prompts that it creates for those sub agents. Priority issues fixed. Then it ran the diagnostics fixer, and I think the diagnostic fixer will do fixes right away. And then at the end it finished. Not sure if, yeah, there we have it, 1 hour, 1 minute to do all those changes. And it touched 42 files. It wrote 8,000 lines, deleted 14,000 lines of code. And in the end, I get changes. And now we can look at what it actually did. I won't show you everything, of course, but maybe some of those things. Maybe the session log first. So it just writes down a little bit of what's done to refer back to it, because I'm not sure if that's really that important, but it might help with restarting, like when you start new sessions, or for the agents to see what's been done already before. There was a question which Claude Code I use. Max. This is the smaller Max version, with like for $100 or something a month. But I'm almost at the point where I consider upgrading to the bigger one for 200. So this is the session log. Then we have diagnostics also. There is a log. Let's see. Open it up directly. So we have 20,000 lines of analyzers of diagnostics because it's output in JSON. That's also done by the compiler. There is a setting for that somewhere. I need to see if they're... Not sure if it's documented here. No parallel. Oh, output. There we go. You can specify the output. I think that's just a pass through to the default AL compiler, but you can have them output directly into a folder, which makes it way easier to process if Claude Code doesn't get this into the response output in the command output, but just in a file. Then it looks at those, but you can see there are many infos still. I need to tweak this somehow, or maybe create a separate rule set where everything's warnings or even errors to make it really fix everything that I want to be fixed. But for now, I had different priorities. But it also does an analyzation of the diagnostics, and the bigger things are fixed. So that's not that bad. Yeah, and then looking at the code, it did quite some changes to everything, and it correctly implemented what I wanted to have implemented. Where I have interface parameters. Now I'm not sure, I still need to see, and I did not review the code before the stream. This was just finished today, and I had different things to do before. So I just noticed that this is a local procedure with an interface parameter, so I'm not sure if this should be tested or if this shouldn't be tested. My guess would be a two-line function should not be tested, but there are enough of procedures which are now internal with interface parameters to do dependency injection. This is the entire change, and as you can see, there are many functions that were either moved to different code units, or just consolidated, or where just the parameters got changed and things like this. So I'm really curious if this will work right away. I would assume it compiles. Let's see, because it, like, the agent ran the compiler. That's the wrong command. It does compile. Whether it works, I will still have to see. But this is essentially what I wanted to show you. This is how I now do development with AI tools or with Claude Code. Yeah, you can see, you can look at the repositories, both the AL compiler if you want to have it, if you want to use it. I've made efforts to make it work also on Windows via PowerShell. I haven't tested that myself because, as I just explained, I don't run Windows anywhere. But it does work on Linux quite well, at least on my environment, my machine, right? So yeah, and the other one is the Claude profiles. You can take everything and use it, take parts, take prompts, take agents as you like. It's been working really good for me lately. It does require some iterations, of course. I've not yet investigated how to make it control itself more. Shouldn't there be tests before refactoring? Yes, this is absolutely work in progress. I did not create tests while writing the code. I didn't do test-driven development. So this is my take on getting to a point where I have all the tests to then, after go live of this app I created for this customer, then do refactoring with tests. So yes, this is not yet live, this app. This is for a customer, as I said, and this is still on the drawing board. So not done. Tests will be done soon. What's the main benefit of using agents? Yes, the main there are few benefits. First of all, I can have unpolluted context, I would say. So looking at the agents again. The agent starts with a clean context basically. So let's look at the developer. It knows about MCP servers and things. It knows about the general document, and it knows about its specific document instructions, but it doesn't know everything that was before, so it doesn't get sidetracked so fast. That's, I think, one of the benefits. And the other benefit is, if we look at this ran for over an hour. It did all of those changes, and I'm at 69% context while I started at 20% because of the instructions and everything I have in the general session. This I don't think would be possible without agents that are writing into files and returning to the main session only the summary, because what I've noticed before I implemented the file approach is that the agents tend to return everything they found out to the main session. And then this session just blows apart within a few agent calls. So I've implemented this strict rule that they return just a few lines and they write everything else to file. That way this context stays more or less clean, and I can do much longer sessions before I need to restart the entire context and the entire session. That's why I switched to using agents instead of trying to implement everything in one go. Obviously, if you do small changes, you don't need that. But if you do changes like this and refactorings and everything, it's much easier. And now I can use the same session, the same context, to start the documentation on this as well before I wrap everything up. How about generally using AI agents versus writing the code manually yourself? Good questions. I figure my knowledge about Business Central in general and AL development is much more worth than me physically typing in the lines of code. So I am in a phase of transitioning now to a point where I'm more orchestrating the developers in terms of AI agents instead of me really writing the code. So what I'm doing is, obviously small bug fixes or smaller things I still code myself, because it might be faster than explaining everything and then reviewing. But things like this, I don't know how long it would take me to write and refactor all of this with that quality, honestly. And now I can go back to testing this and reviewing this and like making to finalize it basically, instead of sitting there 2 days and writing the code. I think it's similar to a situation where you are working in a multiple people team with developers, you're doing code review and everything. I don't have colleagues that I'm working together with, so this is more or less the I think I've heard this phrase before, the junior developer I do code review against. So yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes. And okay, any other questions? Anything else I should show? Otherwise, I would probably come to an end here. Okay, seems like there are no more questions to this. So yeah, again, a shorter one. I hope to get into streaming more frequently again very soon. It's always a little bit of a struggle to find something really interesting to share, but I figured this would be worth sharing. It was the first time I had a runtime of like over 1 hour of uninterrupted runtime basically, and also with like more or less decent results. I'll see how decent they are, but I have a feeling they're not that bad. So I figured I'm now at a point where I want to share this with you all, and also make it open, make it public for you to reuse. All right. And in any case, if anybody watching this after the stream, watching the recording, feel free to comment in the comments below, asking questions if you might have one. I'll try to answer them, of course. And yeah, see you next time. Have a good one.